Less than 25 hours away from tampering period in the NFL. A lot of new names going to be added to this Jets roster. I'm fired up for this one. Our guy Ian from JetsCentral is here to talk all things free agency primer for our New York Jets. It's a live Sunday episode of the DTereman Football Show, and it starts right now.
Not only have to understand how to win, but to understand how to consistently win.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome into another episode of the Believe in Jets podcast. I am your host, DTereman, where today we have a loaded episode talking about the free agency period, almost 24 hours away from the legal tampering period opening tomorrow, Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern. And to help us break it all down is our guy, Ian from JetsCentral. Let's bring him on. Ian, what's up, man? I appreciate you hopping in here on a Sunday.
Dylan, what's up, dude? Glad to be here.
Dude, this is going to be awesome. I know that you and I equally love the team building process, both free agency and draft. I lean a lot more towards draft, but you are so in the weeds with these free agency players. If you have not already checked it out, Ian did 45 free agent targets for our New York Jets. Absolute madman on a Sunday morning. So
it was rapid fire, bro. Rapid fire. Not anything too crazy.
It was, but the amount of research that you had to get 45 players on your free agency board is just amazing. So let's just dive right into it. How this is going to work is we're going to go offense first, we're going to go defense second, and then we're going to do quarterback third. So we're going to piecemeal the team together through free agency and then talk about the quarterback position. And then at the end, we'll just throw in maybe one or two rookie draft prospect names that we can add to this collective mock-off season that we've kind of put together here on the fly. So with that, offensive players first, wide receiver position. Now, I'm of the mindset, and I don't know how you feel, you can never have enough depth at wide receiver. I am always a fan of having at least 4 guys, maybe even 5 in your rotation that you feel strongly about that can, quote, get you out of a football game. And it felt like John Mechie at times was that guy for the Jets as like a wide receiver 4. I go back to that motion swing pass that he dropped in the red zone, and that's where I feel like it all kind of started to fall apart for him. But there were a few weeks there where he was a viable option for us. Obviously, they didn't pick up his tender, so he is expected to be a free agent, but there's a ton of names. Wide receiver, almost like safety. When you look at the list over and over again, you'll find a name that you forgot the first time. You're like, whoa, that's an intriguing name for the Jets. So wide receivers right off the top, my biggest fish for the Jets, and it's maybe not the best wide receiver on the market, Romeo Doubs. So go through the list of a couple guys that you have on your wide receiver big board for the Jets, and maybe talk about Doubs specifically a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think, man, like it's tough because the Jets are like in such a weird position. So we can just like scratch off Mike Evans. Like he's not coming here. Rashid Shaheed has been linked heavily to other teams. Wan'Dale Robinson's a guy who I'm interested in, but it's really seeming like all signs are pointing to Tennessee, unfortunately, right? To reunite with Brian Daboll and whatnot. Alec Pierce, dude, I don't know if you read the Jeremy Fowler report. I think it was Jeremy Fowler that came out with it, but he said that Pierce could be getting $27 million annually, which is just crazy to think about.
Yeah.
You know, just the thought of like Alec Pierce potentially being like a top 5 highest paid football or highest paid wide receiver in football as like a number 2 wide receiver, kind of weird to think about. But I think for me, dude, Jawan Jennings is probably my number 1 target. And also just, you know, for context, I really don't think that the Jets are going to be like big time spender, big time like locking in all these different guys, like kind of like New England last season, where it was like a $100 million deal and a $60 million deal and another big deal, because Darren Muji is coming in from Denver, kind of a draft and develop team. Aaron Glenn coming in from Detroit, a draft and develop team. But Look, dude, we need talent. So I'm really hoping for like one big fish, whether it's at wide receiver or safety or edge, corner, even. We're going to get into names here, but I think Jawan Jennings for me just checks the most boxes. You know, he could play as a slot wide receiver. He could play as the team's number one wide receiver. We saw that when Ayuk went down with his injury, they asked Jennings to be the X, and he stepped in and had the best season of his career. He could be the prototypical Z wide receiver, short game, intermediate, down the field, um, middle of the field, boundary, throw a screen to him, watch him work up the sidelines. You know, Jennings, a willing blocker as well. I just feel like Jawan Jennings, to me at least, checks the most boxes. But dude, Dobbs is consistent. Dobbs, you know, he's the one to me that you just feel like it doesn't matter the quarterback, it doesn't matter who else is around him, it doesn't matter the coach, like nothing, like you have all these changing parts, and Dobbs is going to give you anywhere from like, you know, that 500 to 700 yards, just pencil it in, steady player. I feel like he's improved from an eye test standpoint over time because he had some drops early on in his career, but Romeo Dobbs, I feel like is he's definitely an interesting option. And we also have some like lower tier names, but
Mhm.
and this would kind of be like, okay, maybe the Jets want to hand, say, Jalen Phillips like an $80+ million contract, or they want to go big money Tariq Woolen or Alante Taylor, you know, somebody like that, and you want to go out and snag like a Calvin Austin from Pittsburgh or Jalen Naylor from Minnesota, who I feel like he's been kind of getting some buzz lately. I was talking to Tyson from Let's Talk Jets Radio about him. He likes him a lot because he's always been a little underutilized with Justin Jefferson there and kind of the quarterback questions. But Naylor is interesting, man, because on the field eye test, like he really is impressive, but the numbers don't really back it up.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Juwan Jennings out the gates because predictively, I believe it was Fox Sports did a free agency matchmaker of the wide receiver position. And we don't need to talk about who they had the Jets matching up with, Stephon Diggs, which please shoot me now. But they had Romeo Dobbs going to the San Francisco 49ers. So I was like, okay, well, maybe they feel like Juwan Jennings is not going to be retained in San Francisco. And obviously, they have a lot of things going on with Brandon Ayuk. He's obviously not going to be with the team anymore. They spoke pretty low of him at the end of season press conference. So Juwan Jennings to me is a fun name because, like Romeo Dobbs, he can play the Z, he can play a little bit of X. He's interchangeable with Garrett Wilson, right? A lot of people are trying to find the perfect body style to go opposite Garrett Wilson, and I feel like we kind of have that in AD Mitchell. So get you a guy who can play the Z, play the slot, be a little bit more interchangeable with Garrett Wilson. So Juwan Jennings and Romeo Dobbs would probably be on the top of my list. I do like Wan'Dale Robinson. I am a little nervous, 1 year kind of wonder with the New York Giants, although when Malik Neighbors went down, he really picked it up for the Giants, and Jackson Dart and was a pretty good security blanket. Another guy you mentioned in your video was Rashid Shaheed. I would love that because for me, Arian Smith didn't really hit the mark as that, vertical threat, that deep ball guy. So perhaps Rashid Shaheed could do that. Oh, by the way, he has special teams upside as well from his time with New Orleans and Seattle. So you're kind of hitting two birds with one stone if they don't bring back like a Kene and Wangu type of player to go along with Isaiah Williams. So I think that they're going to go at least with one name, probably a B or C tier free agent from this group. But a guy you mentioned also, Calvin Austin, I wouldn't mind that. Aaron Rodgers spoke very highly of Calvin Austin. So hypothetically, Aaron moves on or retires or doesn't come back to Pittsburgh. Maybe Calvin Austin doesn't either. Whereas if Rodgers is retained in Pittsburgh to play for Mike McCarthy, I could see him kind of advocating for Calvin Austin to come back. So if you had to guess, would you just say it's going to be a B or C tier free agent instead of like that Alex Pierce breaking the bank type of player at wide receiver?
Yeah, I would say it's probably going to be a lower tier. And all due respect, I'm not saying lower tier like quality
Yes.
of a player, but lower tier as in he's not going to be asking for $20+ million a season.
Mhm.
Because Naylor, I don't think I mean you can get him for definitely under 20. Calvin Austin definitely under 20.
Yes.
And the reason why I say that is because in a wide receiver deep class and us having the 4 picks in the top 44, you can argue if one of those picks, not at 2, but 16, 33, 44, if one of those picks is a wide receiver, do you, how should I guess we could frame it like this. If we say, for example, we love Lemon, we love Jordan Tyson, we love Omar Cooper, Casey Concepcion, Denzel Boston's in the mix. If one of those guys is at 33, or, if they want to just snag their guy at 16, you can go out and do that. It's totally fine with me. I think I would actually prefer that. But if you are already paying Garrett Wilson top 5 money, you expect AD Mitchell to get on the field and have snaps. Do you really want to be in a position where you're giving Alec Pierce $25 million? Like that, to me, you're kind of just erasing wide receiver off of the team needs, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I think with how many holes and problems this defense has, of course, assuming that we have to factor in a scheme change as well, I think that the focus should be on the defensive side of the football, get like instant contributors, guys that are bought into the coaching staff and whatnot. And then offensively for wide receiver, you just hope that one of these wideouts falls to one of your picks. Again, 16, 33, 44, someone that you like. The problem is overall, it's going to be a pretty young wide receiving core. But if I had to guess, dude, Jalen Naylor, I think would be an awesome pickup.
Yeah, I agree there. And I agree also, you can get away with signing a wide receiver in free agency and also drafting one fairly highly in the draft, one of their first 4 picks. I don't assume it's going to be at 2, but like you said, 16, 33, 44, you can get a very quality player like a Jeremy Bernard from Alabama, Casey Concepcion, who you mentioned from why am I blanking? Texas A&M, excuse me. Yeah. And then Deion Burks, who somebody mentioned in the chat as well. Like he could be somebody who maybe if you're trading down from 33 or 44, you could target him like around pick 50 to 60. So I would love to see them double up. You can't have enough depth. And I understand people are going to be like, no wide receiver is going to come here without knowing who the quarterback is. And we'll get to the quarterback conversation kind of towards the end of this. But I do think drafting and signing a wide receiver is the most optimal path for the Jets because you have a lot of guys on young contracts. AD will eventually need to be paid, right? And then you're going to pay whoever the free agent is. As long as you're not paying $20 million per season to that guy, I think you can round out the room really well from a skill position perspective. Now, up front, the offensive line.
Real quick, can I actually just add on,
sure.
like piggyback off of your point? And by the way, I keep looking down because the list is right here. That's I'm not just.
I love the handwritten notes. I am such a handwritten note guy. I write note cards all day long. I have everything written out and spread across my desk. It's not on a computer.
Yeah, dude, the handwriting is just so much easier, man. The typing it's so tedious. But what I was gonna say, what's interesting about that approach, like if the Jets want to just hit on a bunch of like tier 2 free agents, they can just make that push immediately. Like if what was the report? I think it was 10 plus teams they're going to have interest in Alec Pierce. You got to imagine that Romeo Doubs is going to have at least 3 to 4 bidding. San Francisco, the Raiders. There was one more team that Arizona I saw interested in Romeo Doubs, Wan'Dale Robinson. Like you got to imagine that like those contracts probably aren't going to be signing like within the first hour or two. So it makes me wonder, okay, if you have all these top tier guys and all these teams that are wrapping up money in free agent offers to the Jennings, the Dobbs, the Pierces of the world, maybe even the Shaheeds, if they just go full in with Jalen Naylor or again, a guy in Calvin Austin, who at this point would be an upgrade. I think it was telling letting Mechie go. I don't think we let Mechie go and then just do nothing in free agency.
Right.
I think if we had a fear that no one was going to sign with us, or maybe we didn't like any of the options, or they didn't feel like they were realistic, they would have just tendered Mechie back for that cheap price. Yeah, and then just went all in with the draft. So I think, with even if Mechie was here, we would have needed a wide receiver. So I'm thinking maybe a tier 2 wideout, and then we hit maybe it's 16 or 33. But just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, and you kind of sparked another thought process sticking with wide receivers. If they are expecting to draft one at 33 or 44, there has been, fake reporters out there, fake insiders talking about Brian Thomas Jr. I would peel off 44 and even 133rd or 179th overall, send that right to Jacksonville and go get Brian Thomas Jr. instead of having to draft and develop one, because still 23 years old, you have contractual control for him for at least 2 more seasons, 3 more if you pick up his 5th-year option after this year, which I assume the Jets would do. Would you be an advocate of, instead of drafting one at 44, like say Jeremy Bernard, would you rather just trade it for a Brian Thomas Jr.?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting because we've seen high-end play. He's going to be cheap because he's still on the rookie deal. And we also know Darren Muji, as the GM June points out, Darren Muji is a beast at trading. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's starting to become a trend where whether it's Muji, whether it's the pro personnel executive, whoever it is within this Jets building, they do a great job of identifying talent across the league and saying, okay, this guy can either fit or he's not going to fit with us. I just don't feel like it's a coincidence that we acquire Juwan Briggs for a pick swap, and he's so much better than advertised, right? Coming in from Cleveland. He's always thought of as like a decent player, and Cleveland had a deep defensive line. That's why he came in. It's not like they just kicked him to the curb. But you look at what happened with Jarvis Brown-Lee. Like the second he's on the field, he's a massive boost over Michael Carter, just like for what the Jets defense wanted to do. Harrison Phillips had a good season. Adonai Mitchell on pace over like a 17. Like if he was here for the whole year, he would have been like from a career number standpoint, he would have had the best season of his career. So, I look at some of these trades, and we're now factoring Tavondre Sweat into the fold with someone who I'm really excited about. I wonder, it makes me wonder. I wonder if Darren Muji would just prefer, hey, you know what? I have such a good track record, and we internally have a really good understanding of guys that are already in the NFL, maybe guys that we can pick up. I mean, we've shown that we can do it with non-household names. Why couldn't we go out and do that with a household name in Brian Thomas?
Yeah, 100%. I see 90 of you guys in the room. We're talking with Ian from JetsCentral, all things free agency. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you do want to send in a super chat, it will jump to the front of the line and we will get it up on the screen. Transitioning over to interior offensive line, obviously and thankfully, the Jets don't have a need at offensive tackle for the first time in many, many years. Obviously, Fashanu and Membu as your bookends on the offensive line, but they do have a bit of a hole at left guard. And if you really wanted to, you could debate that they can go get competition for Josh Myers at center. So obviously John Simpson, AVT are the names that we're watching to see if the Jets retain them. It seems like they're going to let them seek out their market around the NFL and then maybe come back to the Jets and see if they want to match or better that offer that they get. I would probably lean like neither of them are going to be back, but just this morning, Brian Gutekunst, the GM of the Green Bay Packers, signed a deal with Sean Ryan on a 3-year extension. So that could open the door for somebody like Elgton Jenkins, who has tons of positional versatility to hit the open market. So if that were to be the case, I would love an Elgton Jenkins. Just plug him right in at left guard. You help him next to Josh Myers. I think Josh Myers needs 2 really good guards next to him to help him out because he is going to be the weak point on our offensive line. So you had a couple other names, say Malu, David Andrews, Joel Bitonio, even Cade Mays. So do you think this is another position where they should double dip and get one in free agency and still look to attack this position in the draft?
I kind of look at that 4th round pick as a nice landing spot to get a decent guard who can maybe sit for a season. So my initial thinking was you could bring back John Simpson on a 1-year cheaper contract, like 1 year, $6.5 million, let him roll for the entire season because he's shown durability. And then once that contract's up, now with the year on the bench, hopefully that 4th round guard can step in and, be a potential long-term solution. But not only is Simpson not back, but there's also a lot of talks about, okay, the Jets could pass on quarterback in the top 44. If they want to take a swing or want to have like their choice of all the day 3 guys, they will have it because they have the 3rd pick in the 4th round. I think it's 103 overall. And the 2 teams in front are the Raiders and the Titans, which, both of those teams are not going to be drafting quarterbacks in the 4th round. So if you want to maybe say, I love Drew Aller, I love Garrett Nussmeier, maybe somebody like that is on the board, you kind of feel like that 4th round pick is going to be opted there. And then, for rounds 5, 6, and 7, it's kind of tough to say like, this is going to be the guy that's going to be like our for sure future option, unless like someone falls due to injury or, some sort of medical concerns or off the field issue. But that was my original way of thinking. But because Simpson's out there, because ABT's out there, and, granted, they can definitely both come back. But I wouldn't necessarily mind it if the Jets, Frank Reich is looking at the unit saying, hey, we have a left tackle on a cheap deal. We have a right tackle. We have a right guard. All these guys are on cheap deals. Josh Myers is on a cheap deal. Let's actually go out and spend a little bit of money and just shore up the offensive line. I mean, if we can get, take your pick, David Edwards, like you mentioned before, Jenkins, like this O-line could legitimately be a top 10 offensive line in football.
Yeah, and to go kind of circling back into the quarterback conversation, it doesn't matter who the name is at quarterback. If you have those 5 offensive linemen in front of him, no matter who it is, they're going to feel pretty good about their chances of staying upright, especially, the Frank Reich preferred pocket passer, taller style quarterback. If you have that offensive line in place, it's very hard to look at yourself as a bad offensive floor, right? Between the offensive line, bringing Brees back, it doesn't necessarily have to be an elite quarterback in terms of like, I have to backpack and carry this team. You can bank on the skill position players and the offensive line talent in front of you and just be like a game manager plus in this offense and have a really good way. So I do think if they were to spend, let's just say $20 million per season on one position, I would almost prefer it to be like an Elgton Jenkins, because then you don't have to take Vega Leone from Penn State at 16. You don't have to worry about it until, like you said, pick 103 if they're not going to go with a day 3 quarterback. So I'm all for finishing off the offensive line, and then you can still attack depth, because it's always important to have depth on the offensive line. Those guys don't really make it to free agency, which is another reason why Elgton Jenkins, yes, he's probably the Green Bay version of Elijah Vera Tucker, multiple position versatility, but very lengthy injury history. But I would actually take the swing on Jenkins instead of trying to outbid somebody for the rights to retain AVT.
Yeah, and I also kind of wonder too with Jenkins and Walker, how much will the Dolphins make a push for these guys with John Eric Sullivan and Jeff Hafley in the mix? Like all these former Packers, you just kind of you're looking at from afar saying, I wonder if they view these guys as like long-term building blocks, they're willing to just go out and spend the money and secure them. But I think both of those guys will have big markets. I mean, right now, if we look at really the entire landscape of the NFL, like there's a lot of good teams that need help on the O-line. Like the Lions need help on the O-line. The Vikings could use some more help. Seattle really needs a right guard. Buffalo now needs a guard. Obviously New England, they need a lot of help everywhere. So it's going to be Green Bay's completely shaking it up. There's going to be a lot of Baltimore's another team that I feel like if they don't bring Linderbaum back, man, like they could, like you can argue that they need three offensive linemen. So yeah, it should be
no first round pick now,
and no for the next 2 years, which is crazy. So yeah, we'll see how it plays out. But I think these offensive linemen, not to mention the Raiders at like $120 million in cap space, like you feel like there's like the markets for these guys are just so it's just going to be so saturated that I don't know if the 3-win Jets can come out on top unless they just massively overpay.
Yeah, I was thinking like an 8%, 10% Jets tax on any of these free agent guys. And that's why Alec Pierce, to me, if he's already getting 27, 28 mil per elsewhere, it's like, we're offering him over 30 to come play for the Jets. So there is definitely going to be a Jets tax involved in this. And that puts the onus on Darren Muji to say, hey, I really need to do my homework on what the market is for these guys. How much, or are we willing to overspend a hair to bring in the guy, and then try to round out the roster as best as possible so that you fill up as many holes in the boat entering into the draft, because you never want to draft for need. And it feels like AG when he was with the Lions. Obviously, he's not, hands-on completely in the war room, but he had say, right? I'm sure he had say in the Jack Campbell pick. They were able to go best player available because they had the roster kind of rounded out. And similarly in Denver with Darren Muji, I felt like they did the same thing. They attacked, retaining their players. They attacked the draft with Bo Nix, and then they rounded out their roster so they weren't forced to say, hey, we absolutely need this position. We have to overcorrect and take that position. So it does just open up a ton of flexibility. People are talking about Linderbaum. I don't know if you happen to see it. Lamar Jackson posted 2 cryptic social media stories. One was the Lindor chocolate, and then one was Denzel Washington doing boom. You put those 2 together, Lindor boom. It's like, okay, then the Max Crosby trade happened, and it was like, okay, well, maybe that's what he was talking about, but how does that tie into Linder chocolate? So I do think Linderbaum is ultimately going to go back to the Ravens, but that's what the best teams in this league do. They retain their best players. They draft and fill in and just kind of develop. And once that good player walks because they can't retain them, they have somebody waiting in the wings to do it. So that's just where I want the Jets to be. You have to emulate good teams in order to become a good team, in my opinion. I keep going back to like the Los Angeles Rams. The Jets are obviously not the Rams, but if you want to do things as well as the Rams do, you got to take some chances and swings like the Rams. That's why I say Ty Simpson at 16 to me is like a no-brainer if you're the Jets, because the Rams would do it at 13 before they traded for Trent McDuffie, of course. But if they took him at 13 and sat him for a couple weeks and Matt Stafford got hurt and he came in and did well, nobody would bat an eye because the Rams are a good team. The Jets don't get that luxury and benefit of the doubt. 150 you guys in the room. Oops, sorry. What's up?
No. Go ahead.
All right. 150 guys in the room. I really appreciate it on a Sunday morning. Me and JetsCentral, Ian, everybody follow JetsCentral if you have not already. If you are living under a rock, over 43,000 subscribers, well on his way to 45,000. We are approaching 1,800 over here on our channel. The road to 2K is alive and well, and we will be doing some kind of cool giveaway for the folks in the chat when we hit that 2,000 threshold. All right, flipping over to the defensive side of the ball. We have tons of needs here. I did my mock off season for the Jets later last week, and I published it. The only name on that defensive side of the ball that is no longer available is Cam Curl. But like I mentioned with wide receiver, every time you check the list of free agent safeties, there's another guy in there that you missed before. So I'll run down a list of a couple that you named as well as some that I like. Kobe Bryant, my basketball GOAT. If you can get him in football, that'd be great too. Brian Cook, who the Jets have been heavily linked to out of Kansas City. Nick Cross from the Colts with familiarity with Frank Reich. Jalen Thompson from the Cardinals, kind of that dark horse B or C tier free agent, in my opinion. And then Reed Blankenship. Since Cam Curl got $12 million a season, 3 for 36 from the LA Rams on a contract extension before he hits the open market, if these safeties cost $10 million per or less, I mean, we just signed Andre Sisco last year to a 1-year, $8 million deal that could get up to $10 million. I would give out 2 of those types of contracts, even if it is a more than 1-year deal. So this to me is the position where I'd rather double dip in free agency rather than, okay, is Dylan Thieneman or Emmanuel McNeil-Warren even going to be there at 16 overall for the Jets? In the latest mock draft that I ran on PFF, Thieneman went 9 to the Kansas City Chiefs, and Caleb Downs went 10 to the Bengals. So Caleb Downs wasn't even safety 1 predictively on PFF's simulator, but safety position. Are you of the mindset where you want to sign and draft one, or you want to just sign 2 and fix the position because Saleh and Joe Douglas never did?
Yeah, I think for me right now, the way I'm kind of looking at it is we definitely have to sign one. I don't care necessarily which top end one it is. Brian Cook, totally cool. Kobe Bryant, totally cool. Nick Cross, awesome. Reed Blankenship, that's someone who had 9 interceptions over 4 years. He comes into Philly as an undrafted free agent. Not only does he just snag a couple starts his rookie season, but he takes over as the full-time free safety in year 2 as an undrafted free agent on a loaded Eagles defense that is championship expectations. And lo and behold, they ended up winning the Super Bowl with Blankenship playing a big part. So that's someone who I think would provide a lot of leadership, a gritty, tough player that I feel like would cost like 10.5 million dollars. And also too, like you mentioned before, the Jets are probably gonna have to overpay a little bit, but I would rather overpay than to strike out with all these guys and just, 48 hours after the window opens up, be looking around like the Will Smith meme, and it's just like no one's here. Like we did absolutely nothing. Just like, if it costs a little bit more to get these guys in the building, like you have to walk before you can run. You got to get respectable. Like you have to put out a quality product on the field. Again, if it takes, if it takes overpaying to land a couple of these guys, just do it. I'm not saying lock into $120 million, Christian Wilkins, Albert Hainsworth type of deal. But if it, costs an extra 5 mil total to get the job done, 8 mil total, even 10 mil for some of these guys, just go ahead and do it. But yeah, one top end safety that is just boom, he's the best on the roster. And then I think my other safety would be more so like a depth piece, like Melon Fonwu from Miami, Ashton Davis from Miami. That'd be pretty funny. And then I would just roll Malachi Moore out there as the starter for this season. And because I felt like there were moments where he looked the part. He was a first team All SEC player. I'm not saying that he's some top safety in football. He's some top 10, top 15 guy, but I definitely felt like he looked playable. And for a team that has a lot of needs, instead of just dumping a ton of money and a ton of resources into two starting safeties, I'm fine bringing one in, get that third rotational guy, and then rolling Moore out there. If Moore regresses, if he doesn't look the part in year 2, then we could approach next offseason where we're projected to be top 5 in cap space. And again, 3 first-round picks, 1 second, and say, okay, you know what? Maybe maybe it's a good idea to attack safety. But right now that's kind of where I stand. If I had to take one, I would probably say Brian Cook, just because of the amount of things that he can do, the box that he can check, and also the defense that he's coming in from. Although DB, I mean, if you look at, I guess, corner, it's an interesting position that, because Kansas City primarily doesn't pay their corners. They just allow them to leave or they trade them, like L'Jarius Sneed, right? And they don't really look the same. So I guess something to monitor, but Kobe Bryant is young and you kind of feel like he has a lot of tread on the tires, being a recently converted safety. But Nick Cross is the one who I feel like you could probably even get cheaper than $10 million per season. Legitimate upgrade. Frank Reich traded up for him back in the 3rd round a couple years ago, or a decent amount of years ago here. But Nick Cross, 24 years old. That guy feels like someone who's cheap, realistic, and can be a building block.
Yeah, I'm with you. Safety to me is a position that I would have ended up on freezing cold takes a couple of years ago. I said Saleh and his regime are going to prioritize safety more so than the cornerback position. That was ahead of the Kyle Hamilton, Sauce Gardner draft. And I was like, you know what? Go get Sauce Gardner at 4, go get Kyle Hamilton at 10, because they're both defensive backs who are built in a lab and they would help you on the back end. And then they went out to trot out Tony Adams and the likes of those types of guys, Isaiah Oliver, and went like bargain bin shopping at safety. So to me, that is the key back end piece. Like I would ignore cornerback in free agency, and we'll get into it in a second, and opt to take a depth guy in the draft and then overhaul the safety room. I don't want to see Tony Adams. Cisco didn't work out, unfortunately, as much as we loved, Syracuse guy, local guy coming back to the Jets, just didn't quite work out and he got injured. So overhaul that position completely. And I wouldn't mind, even if you went out and got a guy who's over the hill, over that 30-year-old threshold with Kevin Byard, I wouldn't mind that either, because they're not going to come with $10, $12 million price tags. If you can get one for $8.5 million and you get another one for $4 to $5 million, and you're spending 13 or 14 million on your safety room as the starters, and then you have Malachi in as your rotational guy, Caleb Downs is going to get close to 13, 14 million, depending on where he's slotted, or so is the Eneman at this point, depending on how high they go. So it is going to be interesting to see who takes Caleb Downs, who takes the Eneman, who makes that financial, because it's not just a draft risk, it's a financial risk at the position too. And you have to factor that in with guys that aren't premium positions, is they're going to be at the top of the market as soon as they get drafted before taking a snap for your program at their position. So I am a little worried about, I love Caleb Downs. The talent is undeniable. If he was there at 16, I'm running up the card, but financially, I'm not sure I want to do it at 2 if I can get 2 free agent safeties for a total of 15 mil per season.
So what would be some cheaper, who are the names that you're thinking about for safety if you want to get 2 starters both under 10 mil?
I would look at Brian Cook because he's probably going to get you just about there, anywhere from 7 to 9 million. Like, I don't know if he's going to get all the way up to 10, but I think maybe he could. So if he is going to push 10, maybe you don't look at him, but I would take Cross and Jalen Thompson and feel completely fine with that for a total of maybe 12 mil per. If it's like 7.5, 4.5 is the split for those two guys. I don't know if maybe you'll get both for under 10 million, but I do think those would be the two that I'm looking at. You take one big swing. Maybe Kobe Bryant doesn't even take a big paycheck either. Maybe he's like a $6 to $8 million a year guy. Cam Curl getting 12 million to me set the market. Like, none of these guys, in my opinion, are better than Cam Curl. So give me
Really? See, I wasn't as high on Cam Curl compared to some of
okay.
these guys. So like I think Brian Cook can get 14 mil a year.
Okay.
Kobe Bryant, I think, and again, right, factoring in the Jets, like if he has a deal, if Kobe Bryant has, a $10 million offer to, whatever, go back to Seattle or wind up with one of these. I mean, the Bills cut a ton of their safeties. If he has a $10 million or say, a $9.5 million offer from, say, Buffalo and an $11 million offer from the Jets, where do you think he's going to go? Like it's,
Mhm.
there's definitely an overpay that needs to take place for, like, I think literally all these guys. But dude, one name that we didn't mention, who's technically not a free agent, but someone who I would love is Minka Fitzpatrick.
Yes.
That is somebody that I'm maybe watching if the Jets, like, say they are tied up with talks with linebacker or edge or, again, guard, like we were mentioning before, wide receiver, and they can't get to a Brian Cook, a Kobe Bryant, or someone like that early. I could see them just flipping a day 3 pick. I don't think it would take a lot to go get him from Miami, a team that's just, kind of blowing it up, as
Mhm.
well as Minka would be a salary dump. So you're not going to be getting anything of value back in return, of
Yeah.
relative value.
So you're thinking even under 5 million for Minka Fitzpatrick for this year?
Or for Minka, 5 mil?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so I'm
I don't know.
talking.
I didn't know what the contract looks like. I know that if you traded for him, you're absorbing the contract, but
So I would say I'd have to take a look at the pre-June 1st trade money that
yeah.
Miami would take. I think it's 5 mil for Miami that they would eat, which brings his number down from 17, 18 to, I think, 12, 13. So that's what we would
Okay.
be taking on an expiring. But if we were to extend Minka, who's only 29 years old, you could, lessen the cap hit and spread it out over multiple seasons. But I mean, if the Jets have all this cap space and we're not signing another big name safety, I kind of would, I wouldn't mind necessarily just paying Minka a lot for the season and eating more of that money while we have the space.
Okay. So you're saying Minka would probably be more of the higher price tag safety, and then you get in a secondary guy like a Melon Fonwu to go along with him to kind of round out the room. That's actually a really good something I haven't thought about, and I haven't looked at the contract with Minka. I was just under the assumption that eventually they would release him and the Jets could figure it out. But if they want to get ahead of it, that's a player where it's like, okay, he comes with the veteran leadership where it seems like they want to add 3 to 4 veteran leaders across this roster. Somebody who could play a little bit of versatility, right? He's a free safety and also a bit of a box safety. So I do like that. And then you add in that secondary addition. I didn't realize looking at it that Jalen Thompson played at 12 mil last year for the Cardinals. So I thought his price tag was going to be a lot lower, candidly. And again, this is the tricky part is you pull up over the cap or spot rack and you look at the list and there's just always one more name that you haven't even factored into the decision. So I like that with Minka Fitzpatrick. Now, what were you about to add?
Yeah. Just to quickly mention, again, I think these safeties, I don't think, I think the only one that probably is going to get under 10 mil is Nick Cross and Kevin Byard on annual. I think all of the other guys are going to get 10 plus mil per season.
Okay.
Just a guess.
Yeah. I thought, to me, Cam Curl was more setting the market, but I like that you're thinking there's going to be guys who are going to go over that, because I've been of that mindset of like, okay, a lot of these guys are going to come around $10 million. Whereas, and that's always the tricky part of free agency, right? Is you don't know what the market is until the market is officially set. So maybe there are more $10 million free safeties out there on the free agent market than I thought. Somebody asked the question here, Jet Jaro, he says, DT, so do you think Kobe Bryant or Byard gets more or about the same? So I'll let you answer this first. Kevin Byard played last year, 7.5 million. He's 33 years old. I would say that it's going to be Kobe Bryant based on the age and the upside getting more money than Kevin Byard. But how do you feel about those two guys specifically, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Byard?
Yeah, I would say it's gonna be Kobe just because of the age and the tread on the tires with him. And
Mhm.
also, coming off a Super Bowl championship, like I think what's really cool about Kobe is, of course, he looks good. Like he's a good safety in the league, but because he's a converted corner, who was actually the corner too on Sauce Gardner's Cincinnati team. Gardner was the one, Kobe Bryant was the two.
Yes.
Um, when he swapped over to safety, he definitely picked it up pretty quickly, and he looks like a natural at it. So it kind of like my guess would be defensive coordinators are making or they're maybe looking at Bryant saying, "Hey, he could take another step. Like he's already good enough to win, to be the starting back end free safety for the Seattle Seahawks defense. Like if I get him in my defense, and as he gets older, as he's just honing in on safety year after year after year, like this guy can really play for a long time and have like a late ascension to his career.
Mhm.
Whereas with Byard, yes, he's a good player, but I think the 33, his age being 33 years old, I don't know when his birthday would be, so I don't know if he'd be 34 at the time of next season. But it's interesting, right? Because like you hear you hear fans, they'll say like, "Oh, Alex Anzalone's too old at
Yeah.
31, 32," or "Oh, I don't want Demario Davis because he's too old." But Kevin Byard, at 33, despite the good season, like he is up there in age. So it's interesting, and I also think too that Byard will probably wanna join on to a team that is gunning for a Super Bowl, not
Mhm.
like a rebuilding team, if he doesn't have much time left. Again, just a guess.
Yeah. Kobe Bryant, sneakily 27 years old. So I thought he was a little bit younger, candidly. So it is kind of interesting that getting his first major contract, he played for 1.1 million last year. Now he's set to get a pretty big payday. So I assume he and his agent are out there like, hey, if we get a 3-year deal, you're going to be 30, almost 31 by the time you get a second big contract. Let's go, take advantage of this market and hopefully get you a big payday. So that is also part of this entire formula with free agency, where it's like, okay, what are the player and agents' needs or wants throughout this process as well? So, yeah, I think safety is going to be a super interesting one. I would prefer them attack that over corner. We could talk about corner, even though I think they're just going to get a couple of depth guys, but 208 of you guys in the room across X and YouTube combined. I really appreciate you guys hopping in here on a Sunday morning with me and Ian from JetsCentral. Hit the like button, subscribe if you are new to the channel. Super chats will jump to the front of the line. All right, cornerback, I'll let you go. I don't have a name that I want to bring up at the position because I would much rather just go get a Sicario Davis in the 4th round, or even a Chris Johnson from San Diego State in the 2nd round has been popularly mocked to the Jets at 44 recently. So if they went the free agent route at cornerback, who would you add and what do you think their role would be? Are they starting over AZ Thomas? Are they competing with AZ Thomas, or are they the third boundary corner kind of depth guy in case of an injury?
Yeah, I think the first thing that needs to be mentioned here is last offseason, I didn't think the Jets were going to be interested in corner. I felt okay, it's a deep class. Will Johnson, Trey Thomas, right? Like, there were so many corners. They were heavily linked to Jade Barron as well before the draft. I was thinking, okay, they're probably not going to spend money there. And then what was it on the first or second day of free agency? They signed Brandon Stevens to a big deal. I'm like, whoa, where
Mhm.
did this come from? Nobody even mentioned that. None of the reporters threw out Brandon Stevens' name. It's just boom, here's a big deal relatively big deal out of nowhere. And so I think when we're looking at the room right now on paper, with a scheme change, with a bunch of new coaches in the mix, and if you look at just the amount of DB coaches or coaches that we have on our staff that have a DB background, whether it's Glenn, Duker, we retained Chris Harris. right? We
Mhm.
brought in Booker to be nickel coach, Ryan
Mhm.
Slowick as safety coach. That's five defensive coaches on our staff with a background in defensive backs. And I think on paper, our corner room, like Madden perspective, is fine. You know, Brownlee, Stevens, Azari Thomas. Like, okay, you're kind of assuming, okay, well, Azari Thomas takes a step and Brownlee's out there. He's making plays. He fits the defense and whatnot. But if someone regresses, if someone gets hurt, we're right down to Quantez Stiggers as our
Mhm.
rotational guy. I don't really know how much I like that. You know, if you can go out and get like a Jalen Watson from Kansas City, man, I mean, Jalen Watson, Alontae Taylor, Tariq Woolen, I think all three of those guys would come in and be corner one immediately,
Yeah.
which then just slots everybody down.
Mhm.
And then Azari Thomas would be the first guy up off of the bench. But also, I'm not really against the idea of just competition. You know, add talent in free agency, right? Bring the guys in that you feel like are the best fits. And then if Azari Thomas is dominating and he's starting over Brandon Stevens, then cool. You know, I'm not going to push back and get angry with it. You know, I want the best available players out on the roster. And if they feel like we really lack corner depth and we could really use a corner one, then and they want to make a push for, I mean, because all three of those guys make sense from like an Aaron Glenn. You know, you're thinking like bigger, taller, stronger press corner that
Mhm.
has length. All three of those guys, I feel like, check those boxes. But if they maybe don't want to go after, you know, one of the top guys and spend the money, I feel like Amik Robertson for the Lions as maybe that first guy up off the bench,
Mhm.
or even reuniting with Marshawn Lattimore with Aaron Glenn again as your first guy up. I'm not saying they're going to be your corner one, but they're kind of replacing Stiggers, right? Stiggers drops and Lattimore slots in as the first corner up off the bench. Same with Robertson. You know, both guys have again experience with Glenn. Both guys would be cheap, and you also feel like both guys would be really good in the locker room. Like, just I've been around the game. I'm a leader. I've worked my way up. That type of thing. But I'll say this: if we don't make any moves at corner, I'm fine because I love this cornerback class. Colton Hood, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Jermon McCoy and Colton Hood, I love. I absolutely love.
Yeah, no, I don't think you can go wrong if you want to attack free agency or the draft market for a corner. And Black Gypsy in the chat says we need a premium guy at corner, especially in a 3-4. I think with your 16, 33, 44, you could really get a quality boundary corner to help either play above AZ Thomas or step in as soon as AZ were to get hurt, or if Brandon Stevens starts slipping a little bit. I know the way that Stevens started the year was a little slow, and Jets fans were like, why the hell did we sign him to this contract? Then kind of mid-season, he was rounding into a form where I thought he was playing at times better than he played with the Baltimore Ravens. And then the play kind of slipped off once, Brady Cook came in for the offense and the Jets were just completely helpless and out of football games within the first 2 or 3 possessions of the game. So it was a bit of a roller coaster season for Stevens. And I think I wouldn't be mad if they attacked it. I'd be a little surprised if they went big fish hunting at cornerback, but somebody that I wanted to bring up to you, 28 years old, played on a minimum deal last year for Chicago, 97% of the snaps, Nashawn Wright, former Cowboy cornerback. What do you think about him as maybe you don't go big fish hunting, but you want to get a guy who can at least compete with AZ at the position?
Yeah, he's interesting, man. He's coming off a season with 4 interceptions, right?
Mm-hmm.
His body type is crazy. He's 6'4", just he looks absolutely massive lining up. I do feel like he's maybe better fit for a zone-based defense, but you know, with the
Okay.
scheme change, I really don't know what to expect. My guess is that Glenn is still going to want to play a lot of bump and run, a lot of press man. You know, I have a hard time seeing him deviating from that because that was kind of the blueprint in New Orleans, that was the blueprint in Detroit, that was kind of the blueprint this past season, and we struggled with it last year just because of the names on the roster, right? The guys that we had, and we continued to kind of go down that path. So I don't know, in an offseason with cap space and draft picks and a ton of corners that make sense and a ton of corners that fit that press man style, I don't know if he's going to want to back off that.
Mm-hmm.
But with Stevens, that was someone who Glenn talked about being super athletic, liking his potential in that style of defense. and not necessarily looking at him in Baltimore saying, okay, we want a one-to-one copy. We are kind of looking at your skill set and we're going to apply that to our defense. That's why we made you that signing. Maybe he's looking at Wright saying, we love your length. We love the size. We want to bring you into the locker room, and you're not going to be that top end guy. And he, to be honest, like, he showed an ability to take the football away, and the Jets, quite frankly, had 0 interceptions. So,
Yeah.
if they want to go out and that's why I mentioned Tariq Woolen before, in the first tier, you look at the length, the wingspan. I mean, it's literally some of the best that we've ever seen. Like his Tariq Woolen's length and size matched with speed is just out of this world. So I just have a hard time seeing the Jets look at the corner room and just saying, yeah, we're good here and we're just going to move on. Because I mean, and let's just say Stigers gets hurt or we have 2 injuries, right? Because Azari Thomas spent time in the blue tent and was banged up, missed
That
games.
shoulder injury was not right ever since camp.
Yep. And then Brown Lee was hurt. He missed time. I mean, by the end of the season, we were rolling out
Keidron Smith,
Sam Womack too.
Sam
in that last
Womack.
game. And of course, it's no disrespect to those guys, but in year 2, like, you got to improve the depth. You must improve the depth here. So I just don't like. I feel like there's got to be someone, especially with all these DB coaches. Like, I could easily see them, like, free agencies opening up, and for just kind of an example, like, if they're going around the room with defensive coaches, like, put up your hand for this guy, put up your hand for that guy, they're probably saying, like, yeah, I'd be down to add another corner, another safety for sure. So I don't want to sleep on it. And then there's some other names too, like Cordell Flott from the Giants.
Yep.
Someone who is really I really like Flott from a size and length and speed standpoint, but he's he's frail. He's 175-ish pounds, and that shows up like in stopping the run and whatnot. Josh Jobe from the Seahawks. Jamel Dean, I think, is a little unrealistic, but he's a name that's out there. So
yeah. All right, moving into the front 7, we'll kind of combine these because we're coming up on the hour mark, and I don't want to take up a ton of your time on this Sunday. And then we'll do front 7, and then we'll get to quarterbacks, and then we'll get out of here. Peter, I see your super chat. We will talk about that with the quarterback position in just a couple of minutes. But let's combine front 7, right? Defensive tackle, edge, linebacker. In my opinion, you need to come away with a player, a veteran at each of these positions. I like Kwity Paye, Leonard Floyd, Demario Davis. That would be the big 3 that I would bring in. Who do you specifically like? I know John Franklin Myers is like the most popular mock offseason. Let's bring him back. Let's give him the contract that he deserves. But now it looks like his contract is so ballooned up to a point where if the Jets just kept him at the price tag that Denver got him for when we traded him, we would have saved so many future issues on this defensive line. What are your thoughts about the front 7 as a whole? Do you see them double dipping at any spots? And who are some big names that you like there?
Yeah, definitely linebacker, definitely an edge rusher, definitely a D end in the 3-4, like a 5, I look at like a Logan Hall. That could be like a cheap option.
Ooh, okay.
That's an easy upgrade. But Bradley Chubb on the edge, dude, I'm going to continue to talk about him because, he's someone that was drafted to Denver, and Darren Muji was a part of that team when Chubb was drafted. He's a great fit in a 3-4 outside linebacker. He gets after the passer pretty much every, what you're going to get from Chubb. He's a professional. Now, he could start to decline at some point. That point's probably going to be coming pretty soon, but at the end of the day, like, beggars can't be choosers. The Jets really, really need help at edge. And also, like, if you're looking at Chubb as, kind of a down year and stuff, he still had 8.5 sacks, and he's still a really, really good edge setter and a run stopper. So I also think that if you add add Chubb at 2 and go after, a Reese at 2, a Bailey at 2, whatever, it kind of turns Will McDonald into that third rusher off the bench where you're maximizing his strengths and you're minimizing his weaknesses. And then at linebacker, I don't really think you could go wrong. Alex Anzalone, Demario Davis, Caden Ellis from Atlanta could be a cheaper value option. I don't think the Jets are going to be in on the Devin Lloyd thing because the rumor is he's going to be asking for over $70 million. total.
Yeah,
I could see a team like Carolina stepping up to the plate. There's a lot of teams.
that's a
A
lot
lot
of
of teams
money.
that need. Yeah, a lot of teams that need linebackers. Leo Chenal is another interesting choice. Someone who's really, really good in coverage. And with us being a 3-4 now, I could see that maybe making some sense.
I was just going to say, is Leo Chenal in that Devin Lloyd mold for you, where the Jets are probably not going to want to wade in those waters of such a heavy contract? Because to me, Leo Chenal would probably be top of my list. Absolutely. 25 years old, coming off, a run with the Chiefs where he's seen multiple deep playoff runs. I think he can lock down the middle of our defense, be that quarterback of the defense that Aaron Glenn thought Jamin Sherwood could be when he gave him the contract extension. So do you think he's more of the mold of Devin Lloyd, where he's going to get 70, 75 million total over 3 or 4 seasons? Or do you think the Jets could actually have a potential chance at a Leo Chenal?
I think there's a chance. I don't think he's going to get the 70. One team that I'm kind of circling, unfortunately, is Buffalo, right? With Jim Leonard going to
Oof, yeah.
the Bills. He's swapping over to a 3-4-2, and then Leonard was Chenal's coach in college. So I think that there could be a potential reunion there.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. All right, talking about the quarterback position, because that is the most important position. And quite frankly, it's hard to predict all the other moves, especially on offense, without having the quarterback in place. And we'll start off with this super chat from our guy, Peter Castro. Appreciate it, Peter. $2 super chat says Brissett, Taylor, and Simpson. So that means, and Ian as quarterback 4. So that means that they're trading for Jacoby Brissett. Obviously, the domino effect is Jimmy Garoppolo leaves LA, goes with Mike LaFleur, who apparently that's his guy, to Arizona. That makes Jacoby Brissett expendable. They can trade Jacoby for a nice day 3 pick if that's 133rd, that compensatory 4th. That's completely fine. Then you bring back Tyrod Taylor as your quarterback 2. It seems like there's interest from Taylor to re-sign with the Jets. And then you add Ty Simpson in the draft. How would you look at this quarterback room compared to some of the other options we have at free agency and draft?
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty good. I mean, Jacoby Brissett, again, knows Reich, fits the system, great leader. Rich Cimini was actually talking about him being a Parcells guy on Cimini's podcast. He mentioned that, which I thought was pretty interesting. And we know that Aaron Glenn is a big Parcells. Those two guys have, a connection. But Brissett's coming off a good individual season, obviously not a team, from a team standpoint. You could push back and say, Brissett had a ton of volume. He really led his entire career in passing attempts. So, you could kind of point to, okay, well, that's the reason why he had a decent amount of yards and whatnot. But he was still able to not turn the ball over, which I really liked. I think Brissett gives you an instant playable option, maybe compared to an Andy Dalton. I could see Brissett starting every game for the Jets next season. Andy Dalton, I couldn't.
No.
Tyrod Taylor gives you that steady QB2 backup with, okay, in the event that Brissett gets hurt, awesome, he's in there. But it also bridges the gap between Simpson, where we're not throwing him out there. Okay, Brissett's down, so now we have to force Simpson out there like we did with Geno Smith back in the day with, Mark Sanchez's preseason injury. So, I think that room would be awesome, realistically.
Yeah, and the way I've kind of been framing this, because we are the New York Jets, and every single quarterback that plays on the team is going to see regular season action at some point. And Freedom House says, why carry 3 quarterbacks? Well, because on the off chance that Brissett gets hurt, even though we think he can give you a full season, obviously, barring health, but let's just say Jacoby got hurt. You have Tyrod Taylor in there as your quarterback 2 to be a little bit of a buffer to the rookie and Ty Simpson, or whoever the rookie is, quite frankly. But can Brissett and Taylor give you 8.5, 9 games on the season, and then Ty Simpson comes in and gives you the other 7 games on the schedule? So no matter how you slice it, you need multiple quarterbacks added to the room. I don't think Justin Fields is going to be back. Brady Cook at the minimum needs competition as a quarterback 3 or 4. So that and the fact that every quarterback that plays for the Jets outside of the 2024 season with Rodgers, you're going to see the field. So can Brissett and Taylor give you 7.5, 8.5 games, and then Simpson gets you from mid-November through the rest of the season, and then you evaluate what you have in Simpson, and then you enter the 2027 draft where you have 3 first-round picks, and you say, hey, this 7 or 8 game sample size of Simpson was fairly large enough, like Tyler Shuck, where we feel good about bypassing quarterback in this draft, or we'll take a swing somewhere else. So, yeah, to your point, Freedom House, why carry 3 quarterbacks? It's because we're the Jets, and no matter what, everybody who suits up is going to have to play. I mean, I'm glad we didn't even have to see Hendon Hooker, but I know that's because they were kind of forcing the Brady Cook thing out there. But what's your thoughts on having 2 veterans and a rookie, like it seems to be reported?
That would be my preferred option. Because I know it's exciting. I know it's going to sell tickets and jerseys and stuff to draft Ty Simpson and play him early. But to me, that's not. I love Ty Simpson. I do. I think he could be a lot like Brock Purdy, but I don't want to see him out there year one because I think he needs time. I think he needs a lot of preseason snaps.
Yes.
Get into uh these practice settings where you can really just let it rip in practice and not have any pressure on you to go out there and succeed and save jobs and save the franchise. You're a savior. Like I think I think Ty Simpson's really interesting. And also, one quarterback, like you talked about Brady Cook battling for QB3. One move that kind of went under the radar was the Jets signing Bailey Zappi to a future deal. I wonder if Mushi's looking at Zappi saying like, okay, you're going to be the last guy to compete. Like I would imagine that the Jets have 4 quarterbacks to start camp, probably
Yep.
2 vets, a rookie, and Zappi would be my guess.
Yep.
So I don't think Brady Cook is going to be back, dude, honestly.
No, I could see Zappi, the experienced guy, 2 stops, New England and Cleveland, had 70.7% completion percentage in his rookie year with New England. And obviously that was like the end of the Bill Belichick era, right before they went into Gerard Mayo, the one and done head coach there in New England. So they were going through a transitional phase for sure. And Zappi played okay. Like you said, as a quarterback 3, he's better than Brady Cook. So if he's your quarterback 4 behind the rookie and then 2 veterans, let's just say Andy Dalton and Jacoby Brissett or whatever it is, I feel like you have to round out the room with 2 veterans and a rookie. And even if you don't go the rookie route, that just puts more onus on you need 2 veterans. So I would like them to come away with like a Jacoby Brissett and Andy Dalton. Honestly, I would flirt around any of the minimum quarterbacks, whether it's Kirk Cousins, Kyler Murray, Geno Smith. I would flirt around with those. The 2 names to me that I can't get behind are Carson Wentz and Derek Carr. What are your thoughts on those 2 guys specifically?
Well, Carson Wentz, I don't think would be signed to be the starter. Like I think
Right.
Carson Wentz would be that Andy Dalton, Tyrod Taylor role, like where it's quarterback 2. The one thing about Carson that I find interesting, supposedly he has a lot of options or is going to have a lot of options as a primary backup. But since he's came back, it's really, I mean, you could argue it's the actually the best offensive coaches in football are the ones that want Wentz. It was Sean McVay, it was Andy Reid, last season Kevin O'Connell. I find that interesting. It's not like he's clinging on to one opportunity and he's bouncing in between the practice squad. Like, no, he's actually coveted from high end, super notable offensive minds as the primary backup. So I do find that interesting. Derek Carr is someone who I like, and I think there's more hurdles there with Carr because he has to unretire. You got to trade for him, not going to cost a lot. And then once you get him, you're probably going to have to restructure the deal with him taking a pay cut. So would he be down for that? But I do feel like if you have a healthy Derek Carr, he's better than, like he gives you like an actual option to drop back, hit open passes, not only just manage the game, but someone who can help try to turn the locker room around as well. I've always been a fan of Derek Carr. I never thought he was a top 10 quarterback, but he's definitely a respectable option. But of course, you have to factor in and assume that the shoulder is actually healthy.
Yeah, that's the issue with me is the health, the time away from the game. In my opinion, honestly, I would like to see Derek Carr go back to Vegas and pair back up with Clint Kubiak and, be the bridge to Fernando Mendoza because it doesn't seem like they want to start him right away, at least. So I would hope that, the Jets aren't at least bidding against themselves for a Derek Carr or a Carson Wentz because it seems like they're the only teams really linked to these guys. And I know the Carr brothers had their podcast where they redacted the name of the team that he's going for. And everybody's like, oh, it's the Jets. It's the Jets. I'm not going to say for certain that it is, but I would just hope.
Let me ask you real quick. Why do people think it's the Jets? Because from what I saw, it was like the name was like bleeped out.
Yeah, so people are kind of taking the end of what David said, and it sounded like a TS sound at the end of like what they redacted out, and then people like, yeah. So somebody, Yo Holmes says Carr plays for the Saints. It sounded like it could have been like a TS type of sound at the end of what was bleeped out in the podcast. I think we're kind of running with it a little bit too hard that it's the Jets. Because it seems like there is no interest based on Connor Hughes and Zach Rosenblatt's reporting that the Jets have no interest in Derek Carr. But that little tiny it's at the end of whatever David said made people think that. And it's like, he could have said anything. Maybe he didn't even say a team name and they just bleeped it out. And, Derek Carr is inevitably not even going to come back to the NFL. So it is kind of tough. I do want to end on this because we're just over the hour mark. 243 of you guys in the room. Wow, I really appreciate that. That's one of the most active live chats that we've had in quite some time here on the channel. So thank you all so much. Wrapping up here with Ian from JetsCentral. Hit the like button. Subscribe if you are new. We will end on this. I'm going to ask you for your prediction. Who is the week 1 starter for the Jets, and what does the rest of the quarterback room look like behind that starter?
I'm going to say Jacoby Brissett, QB1, okay. Andy Dalton, QB2, Drew Aller, QB3.
Ooh, okay. So where are you? What I assume you're trading a late day 3 pick for Andy Dalton, like a 6th round pick. Like you can give up like 183 and probably get Andy Dalton. Where are you taking? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so you definitely have to trade for Brissett. Dalton, I think it was Tom Pelissero who reported that. I think it was Pelissero, could be wrong, but Dalton could be released.
Perfect.
Carolina is actually looking to, I think, like, because Dalton has had some injuries. I think they want, now that they're more like win now, and Bryce Young has had like a lot of time, like he doesn't necessarily like need the mentor anymore. Not saying that Dalton is, irrelevant, but Carolina overall feels comfortable with like, okay, Bryce Young, you don't need that older veteran like whispering in your ear in meetings and helping you out every step of the way. Like you're kind of there. We made the playoffs. Now we kind of need someone who, okay, if Bryce goes down, we need someone to come in and be able to, win us playoff games, like a Mac Jones, Davis Mills level of backup quarterback. Dalton, I don't think is that point. I kind of feel like Dalton to me kind of feels like Tyrod Taylor. Like,
sure,
can maybe start for 3-4 weeks, and that's about it. Now, who knows? Maybe we get a Chan Gailey, Ryan Fitzpatrick 2.0 with Reich and Dalton. But,
could you imagine? Where are you drafting Drew Aller then, if that's your 3rd quarterback? Are you waiting till 4th round, 103, 133, something like that? That's what I think too. And quite honestly, the value of Ty Simpson, even at 16, to me is better than the value of an Aller, Nussmeier, whoever it is on day 3, whether it's round 4 or 5. I still think the upside of Ty Simpson is worth the swing at 16, but if you're waiting all the way to the 4th round, like I don't want to trade up into the 3rd round for a quarterback, right? I feel like if it naturally came to you at 103 or 133, I would feel a lot better about that, because Drew Aller is liked by a lot of people, not me specifically, but I do think there is a market for him as like a fringe 100 to 125 player in this draft. So I do like that quarterback room. I guess predictively, I would say, yeah, I would have to go Jacoby Brissett. Actually, no, I'm going to go Marcus Mariota and Andy Dalton. I think that's the pairing for me. You go get your free agent. You don't have to break the bank for a Marcus Mariota. You don't have to trade for the guy who's your presumed starter. And then even if Dalton isn't released, you peel off a 6th round pick. And then I would add Ty Simpson in the 1st round, whether it's at 16 or you trade back in to the 1st round from 33 or 44, because no matter what, these guys are going to play. And I would like to see Ty Simpson on the New York Jets. I feel like the gap between him and Fernando Mendoza is not as large as people are thinking. Like if Fernando went 1 and Ty Simpson went 33, I don't think they're 32 players apart. They're probably closer to like 15 players apart, which makes me say, okay, at 16, it's worth the swing, depending on who's on the board, of course. Like, would you rather take Ty Simpson or Denzel Boston? To me, I'd rather take the swing at quarterback. Whereas If Mekhi Lemon was there, yeah, I'm taking Mekhi Lemon over Ty Simpson 11 out of 10 times. So I like that predictive quarterback room. Anything else you want to plug before we get out of here? We're just at the hour and 10-minute mark.
Well, let me just ask you, do you think I think Ty Simpson could be top 15.
He should be,
I
in
think
my
there's
opinion.
So like I'm looking at the Rams at 13. I think the Dolphins at 11, dude. I'm not.
Well,
I don't want
the
to put
Rams
that.
don't
to
have
bed.
13 anymore, right? Don't they? Didn't they trade it for? No, they traded 29 for Isaiah McDuffie. So yeah, that's an interesting one because are they all in on winning or do they want to slightly peek towards the future post Matt Stafford? That's the interesting one to me. Miami at 11 also with Hafley and John Eric Sullivan. If they miss out on the Malik Willis sweepstakes, could they go get a Ty Simpson for their quarterback room? So I think there's a chance he's gone before 16, but I would also trade up if I was the Jets and I really had
that was my next question.
If I have conviction that Ty Simpson is going to be a top 14 passer in his first 3 to 4 years in the league, I'm making the pick in the first round, no matter what, because the value of missing on Ty Simpson for a Denzel Boston, and then you watch Ty Simpson go crush it in Pittsburgh, right? It's like I would rather watch Denzel Boston win offensive player of the or offensive rookie of the year on another team than watch Ty Simpson win offensive rookie of the year when we've been going through quarterback hell.
It's interesting, man. I mean, like when we get to the Alabama Pro Day, Simpson's stock, I think, is only gonna rise. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong on it, but I can't see Simpson going in the top 10 with how it's laid out. I'm not buying the Browns stuff. I feel like the Browns need to do a little bit of cleaning up on the offensive line. But I mean, who knows? Maybe the Browns just go all in with like Jenkins, like you mentioned, and they secure left tackle. Maybe they're in play for Walker. I know the Browns cap situation isn't the best, but I feel like, man, I just every time I'm doing mock sims, I get to 11. It's like between a corner or Simpson, and I'm like, if you're sitting there and you can get your potential franchise quarterback, I think Simpson fits the Bobby Slowick offense. He's just like Brock Purdy. I don't know. Like, Green Bay, they're all about drafting and developing. You're thinking, okay, if you could take Simpson at 11, just stash him on the bench for a season. I mean, the Dolphins too, man, like they have a lot of picks. They have 3 third-rounders. They have pick 43. They're picking right in front of the Jets in the second round.
Yep.
I don't know, man. I don't know. It should be interesting.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited for free agency tomorrow at noon. I know, Ian, you'll be going live at some point throughout the day tomorrow. I will be back on the channel at some point. Plug your show, Ian, before we get out of here.
Yeah, JetsCentral on YouTube. Cover all things Jets.
Easy, short and sweet. I appreciate you, Ian. I know it took a little bit more time than we originally agreed upon, but 250 you guys in the room. I certainly appreciate everybody for tuning in on a Sunday. DT signing out. Me and Ian will be back. I know this is the second of many collabs that we would do this off season. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. And until next time, let's go Jets.